Here I'm going to talk a little bit more about local variables. So this is just a for loop that goes through 5 times, and every time it executes it calls this function called show static. So what happens here is this variable numCalls is set to 0, and so it'll say this function has been called. It'll increment this to 1, and then times. Now this is a local variable, so every time show static calls, it's going to start off at 0 again. So if I run this program, you'll see what it says. This function's been called one time, one time, one time, one time, because every time through it gets set, it starts at 0, it gets incremented to 1, and then when the function leaves and comes back in the second time, again it starts at 0 and gets incremented to 1. So if you want to keep this value, once you increment it to 1, if you want to save the 1 inside the function so you could use it the next time you're in that function, you have to create what's called a static local variable. And we do that by putting the reserved word static in front of this declaration here, in front of the declaration of the variable. Now if I run it now, look what happens. This function's been called 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, because by putting static here, when it increments numCalls to 1, it saves or preserves that 1 inside of there. And the next time it gets called, it'll save the 2 that's inside of there, and 3, and etc., etc. So that's how static local variables work. Again, the only difference is you just put the reserved word static in front of the variable. Most of the times you won't be using static variables, but this is just kind of for your information.